Good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning,
Good
sir.
morning,
Good
sir.
morning, sir.
Good morning, sir.
So many of you are joining late. Okay. Very good morning to all of you. Now, before I start, tell me how many of you have joined yesterday's program about entrepreneurship? You have got the mail? Everybody has got the mail, I think.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Joined or not? Did not join?
Yes, sir. Join.
Joined.
Okay.
Was it fruitful or not?
Sir, to some extent.
Up to some extent. Actually, in one program, you cannot get all the information. But there
Exactly.
was,
Yes.
yeah, that is, was some information was there. Okay. Let me start today's discussion. Is it visible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Okay. Okay. Last time we had completed in some detail one component was that was
Sir, your mic is off.
can you hear me now?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, I was just telling, I don't know when mic got off. I was telling you that there are two components. One NURCS, second is middle, and we expect that at least one part, either NURCS or middle, will be in the question paper. So it is very simple to understand. Last time we had completed NURCS. Today I will complete the middle part so that this portion is over. Then next week we'll have some other component. Now, before going to that discussion, let me ask one question. do you know the meaning of the term econometrics? Are you getting my voice?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do you know anything about econometrics? Okay, no problem. Then let us skip that question and come to our own discussion. That is cumulative circular causation by Gunnar Myrdal. Let us have some little background of this model, Myrdal's model. Gunnar Myrdal, a Swedish economist, and in this model we are mentioning his two contributions. One book, Rich Lands and Poor, another book, Economic Theory and Underdeveloped Regions, both published in 1957. In the first book, he had presented in a chapter what is the cumulative causation, and in the second book he elaborated it. So you can mention both the books. Although usually in the general textbooks you will get only the second book, name of second book, not the first book. The Myrdal has written extensively in many issues. So I just want to give you some background idea before proceeding to this particular model. I have just given, not very important, but just to have some little background. Because whenever you write answer, you should write at least 2 or 3 sentences about the background of that model or the question. That is the starting point of your answer writing. But I'm just giving you how this idea emerged, basically. I've written that Gunnar Myrdal first described the theory of cumulative causation in Rich Lands and Poor, published in 57, that I have mentioned right now. This book, originally a series of lectures given at Cairo, Egypt, was concerned with a large gap separating the per capita income of the less developed nation from that of more developed nations. And it provided prescription for narrowing the gap. I hope it is very simple that we have discussed this income gap in many times while describing the what is growth, what is development, how the economies are classified into different groups as far as per capita is concerned, how World Bank has classified this issue that I have discussed extensively, this issue, you know. And then Myrdal actually described this issue way back in 1957. That separating two countries, one is underdeveloped countries, one is developed countries, and the gap of per capita income these two countries. And he also prescribed some ideas, some suggestions, how to narrow the gap, how to bridge the gap, so the disparities of income is reduced. In that book, that is Rich Lands and Poor, Myrdal began second chapter book, The Principle of Circular and Cumulative Causation. He began this chapter in this model or theory, which what he described the vague concept of vicious circle. It was not actually vicious circle. He described it as a vague concept. Please mute your mic, someone. Okay. In the Rich Lands and Poor, Myrdal, in second chapter of the book, gave a vague idea of this causation. That is, that from where the concept of vicious circle actually emerges. And we have discussed this vicious circle in terms of Ragnar Nux. Now, how we describe this? There is one more book written by Myrdal, that is An American Dilemma, The Negro Problem and Modern Democracy. This was published in 1944. What we are trying to discuss right now, it was 1957. It means 13 years ago, he had written a book which was very popular, An American Dilemma. And he went on to explain that circular and cumulative causation could also create an upward spiral. You know the spiral, moving upward, that is spiral binding, you know, all the books you get is spiral binding. The same he is talking about here, how the per capita income of some parts will go up and will make a gap. So that he has discussed in his book, American Dilemma. What was the dilemma? I have just written a couple of points that is not very important for discussion, but to understand. In the case of American Negro, white prejudice reduced the standard of living of the blacks. There was white and blacks. Negro means blacks and other people are white. And there was a wide socio-economic disparities and prejudice of choices and actions, everything. And that black had they were living in a low standard living. And that low standard increased due to wise prejudice. Means most of opportunities, socioeconomic decisions were in the hands of whites. So that created the gap. In American Dilemma, Middle had predicted that this vicious circle would end. Exogenous forces would impel a decline in white prejudice against black, which would increase black standard living further, reducing white prejudice. What he had described, that this gap will ultimately narrow down because of exogenous forces, social, political forces, etc., global forces, etc. And therefore, that gap will keep on reducing, and the standard living of blacks will improve in due course of time. Now, in 1957 book, Rich, Land and Poor, what I was mentioning here, it was 44 book. Now, in 57 book, Middle again commented that his prediction has been correct. The process of circular and cumulative causation had indeed caused a remarkable increase in the living of the blacks. Now, how he started this concept in his second chapter of Rich, Land and Poor in terms of circular causation, with little background, I have mentioned about an American Dilemma, which was published in 44 way back when he started this concept. That is why he tried a vague idea of circular, which is circular poverty. I hope you understand this point. Suppose there is question on Middle, just you give one opening paragraph, very small paragraph, 2-3 sentences about these books, especially American Dilemma and Rich, Land and Poor. Just mention, not going to detail what was the problem, just mention that this was the gap of living standard between two groups, two types of people in society were also mentioned by Middle, leading to a cumulative causation. That's enough. Then you come to the actual point that we are discussing in his model. Now, coming to the main idea, what is Middle's model? Actually, Middle replaced the assumption of stable equilibrium with what he called the hypothesis of circular and cumulative causation. Explains why international differences in level of development and inter-regional differences in development within nations may persist. Actually, there were so many economists who believed that in economic system, a situation of stable equilibrium will persist automatically. And the force of instability will be removed and they will reach ultimately to stable equilibrium situation. But Middle was in disagreement of this assumption. And Middle explained through his theory that there are so many reasons which are responsible behind this differences in the level of development at international level as well as national level. And within nations also, the differences may persist, gaps may emerge. That is the background that he says nations will not automatically attain stable equilibrium, but they will move away from equilibrium, and there will be disequilibrium in the level of development within the nation and among the nations across the world. That is basic assumption of the gaps, regional as well as international. Then his hypothesis of cumulative causation, Middle contends that in the context of development, both economic and social forces produce tendencies towards disequilibrium. That I was mentioning in the first point, that he criticized the assumption of stable equilibrium, and he proposed that in the country development, whether we look at the economic dimension or with the social dimension, these forces produce the tendencies towards disequilibrium. And that the assumption in economic theory that disequilibrium situation tends towards equilibrium is false. That is the main point that makes a Middle theory quite interesting. That economists, large number of economists believed that tendency of the economy is to move towards equilibrium. Middle believed that tendency of economies is towards move towards disequilibrium. And equilibrium, assumption equilibrium is not correct. Rather, the countries face the situation of disequilibrium. I hope this point is quite clear, and how he was focusing on this point of disequilibrium, that we are coming in detailed discussion.
Okay, sir.
Basically, it is a hypothesis of geographic dualism. Dualism is two different types. That is dualism, applicable to nations and regions within the nations. And among the nations as well as within the nations, we can see dualism. Geographic dualism means different parts of the country geographically apart, or different countries at a global geography, they are different, which can be advanced to account for persistence and spatial differences in a wide variety of development indices, including per capita income, rate of growth of industrialization and trade, employment growth rates, level of employment, everything. Middle said that this dualism, separation within the country or among the nations, can be seen in wide spectrum. We can use it, we can see it in terms of per capita income differences. We can see in the level of growth industrialization differences. We can see it in context of trade, level of employment, employment growth rate, means all major indicators of development can be seen presenting this huge gap within a nation or among the nations globally. That is, he calls geographic dualism. Different areas of a country which are geographically separated, or different countries of the world which are also geographically separated. I believe that you can connect this dualism in context of India also, or in context of the world also. Can you give me an example of this geographic dualism in India? Anyone?
So like in north there was a different climate, and in the south there was a different climate.
No, actually they are not talking about the climate. They are not talking about the climatical change differences, but they are talking about geographical differences means different parts of the country or different geographical region of the world, not because of climatic differences, but socio-economic parameters. Just see
Sir,
what I have
Kerala
written
and
here.
Bihar.
Yes, please.
Also, Kerala and Bihar.
Yeah, right. Suppose we say southern part of India and northern part of India, or northeast area. You can see widespread differences in per capita income, industrialization, employment, trade, etc., etc. There are so many economic and social reasons behind such differences. Now, as he mentioned, Kerala and Bihar, we can also mention many points. Like if I ask you, people from say Uttar Pradesh and Bihar, they migrate to some other states. Which state you think that is the most important to which people for this region go for their
Maharashtra.
livelihood? Yeah, please.
Maharashtra.
Sir, Maharashtra, Delhi,
Maharashtra.
development country.
This is it means geographical
और
dualism.
सर केरल के लोग अरब कंट्रीज में
Yeah, now I'm talking about the first within the country. Then we will talk about among the countries. That is what he want to say. Geographical dualism. Yani you mentioned that people from northern India, they go to Maharashtra. Do you also think vice versa, that people from Maharashtra come to Uttar Pradesh and Bihar for livelihood
sir.
opportunities?
No, sir.
नो सर
No, sir.
No, sir. No. Exactly. Correct. Very right. Now, can you tell me why this happens?
Sir, Maharashtra is more economically and viable to make money than UP and Bihar.
Yeah, that is the basic concept. You have got the message of middle very correctly. That is the basic concept behind this separation. Similarly, as you mentioned, and if you look at people from India, they also migrate to so many developed countries. As he mentioned, from Kerala to Gulf countries. But if you, not Kerala, but if you look at from India, they migrate to other countries. Can you name a few countries where people migrate from India?
So
Qatar.
Sir,
USA,
USA,
Britain.
France, Germany, is another country.
Please.
There are so many voices, I'm not getting very clearly. Yes.
Qatar.
Qatar. Correct.
Canada.
UAE
They moved to US, they moved to UK, they moved to Canada. Dubai, a very small number of persons. Now, if you look at, say, UK or Canada. Now, Canada, if you look at Canada, large number of people in Canada are from India. Even,
specific
yeah, that is I wanted to mention. Even the defense minister of Canada is from India. That gives you the best example. When you mention Qatar or UAE, they move only for small jobs. But if you look at Canada, they are at a very high position. Also in UK, also in US. They are in the government positions,
सर यूके
high
में भी
government
होने वाला
positions
है
also. Yeah, someone wanted to say something. So that is, you can see geographical dualism within country or among countries also. That is his basic idea of dualism. Now we'll discuss this a little wider context also. What is dualism? Now, dualism is actually a condition of early stage development in developing countries economic and social division of the country, unequal advantage between developed and developing countries. If you look at the various economic and social components, there is division. There is a gap. And this differences in socioeconomic parameters is actually the basic idea of dualism. And because of this dualism, there is unequal advantages between developed and developing countries. Both are not at the same level. Now, what I have mentioned, what do you mean by economic and social divisions in country dualism? It is such as differences in the level of technology between sectors or regions, differences in the degree of geographic development, and difference in social customs and attitudes between an indigenous and an imported social system, and possibly a gap in the level of per capita income. There is technological differences also among sectors or regions also. Are you getting my point? You can
Yes, sir.
just look at
Yes.
this in context of India also and in context of the world also. Suppose I'm just talking about differences in the level of technology between sectors. Now you look at IT sector and look at the agriculture sector. This is sectoral difference in technology use. And if you look at the regions, the same technology. Now suppose I ask you, which parts of country of India or which cities of India you will mention as information technology centers in our country. Can you name?
Sir, Bangalore,
Bangalore and Hyderabad.
Bangalore, Chennai.
Yeah, but what we have not mentioned Allahabad. We have not mentioned Lucknow. Immediately in your mind, the names of some cities emerge. That is the technology difference in regions. Their technology hubs, but not other parts. Therefore, people will naturally migrate to these areas because they are technologically advanced and they provide lot of technological opportunities to the people. Attract those areas attract actually. And differences in social customs and attitude also. In social areas, in economic areas, in per capita income, a level of technology, opportunities, infrastructure, in every area you can see these differences. That is what we mean by dualism. And what is the result of this dualism? That is simple. This geographically dual economy ultimately leads to labor migration, as we mentioned, domestic as well as global. Then capital movement and trade. And if this happens, it retards the development of the backward regions and slow up the development of the whole economy. Because there is less contribution of the backward regions, less contribution of backward nations. And therefore, development of the entire economy in totality will be slow. The development of rural areas will be less, urban areas will be more. Development of developed countries will be more, developing countries will be less. And there is urban bias also that I was just mentioning, rural-urban divide. The urban bias, progressive sectors typically have favorable access to scarce factor production. Factor production which are scarce will not move towards the rural areas, but towards urban areas. Because opportunities are wider in the urban areas. Usefulness of factors of production will be more attractive in urban areas because they are geographically they are developed areas. And similarly, benefit to trade also accrue to the host region. Means the areas which attract, which are developed and they attract capital, they attract migration, labor. Naturally, they will be in beneficial position in trade. They will have more benefit out of trade also. And this dualism results into creating pulling factors in terms of transportation, communication, education, health, infrastructure, banking, insurance, housing complexes, etc., etc. You can think about so many things which are at a higher level in developed regions, and they also attract as pulling force. They are magnets to attract the scarce resources from the backward regions. Because social, financial, physical, all infrastructure facilities are at much higher level in developed regions as compared to developing regions, whether domestically or globally. They are very simple 4 points that I have mentioned, but I would like you to just read it and ask me any question if you have any question in mind, what Middle wants to say. Is there any question from your side?
No, sir.
Okay.
Sir,
Now, yes, please. Bataएं.
sir, is marriage a pulling factor of migration?
There are so many causes of migration. So many causes of migration. Marriage is also one of the reasons why that happens in migration theory. Actually, we are not discussing migration theory. If you look at Todaro theory of migration, you will get many issues in social dynamics also. Also a marriage. But that is a very, very small component. Actually, Middle has not used this term. Therefore, I am not mentioning that term. Got my point?
Yes, sir.
Because we are discussing how Middle has presented his theory, and since he has not mentioned that component, because that also creates, when you talk about marriage, that is a point of actually demographic factor that ultimately results into demographic effect. I hope you understand the meaning of demography.
Yes, sir.
What is the meaning? If I ask you simple, what do you mean by demography? In Hindi, it is Janankiki.
Yes, sir.
What is the meaning? Just a simple meaning. Just give me a simple meaning. In your own words, how will you define the term demography? Can anyone tell me what he has asked? Because he has asked marriage.
Examine the size of the human population, like
Uh,
generally demography.
it is a very, very narrow definition. This is not a total definition. Okay, just I'm telling you. In simple words,
Sir, scientifically study of human population.
yeah, that is good. Demography simply means a scientific study of human population. Human population. Now, if I ask you, what you study, when you tell scientific study of human population, what do you study in this, in demography?
Size, structure, and movements.
I hope I have mentioned some time ago this issue, isn't it?
Yes, yes.
Yes, sir.
Then why you are not so sure about the question when I asked you? I had mentioned 3 points. That is,
Yes, sir. 3 Gs.
in demography, we study the size, structure, and distribution of population, of human population. Size of population, structure of population, and distribution of population. I hope you understand all these 3 terms, if I have mentioned earlier also. Is it clear? Size, structure, and distribution. These are 3 dimensions of human population study in a scientific manner, that is called demography. We have just deviated a little, but it's very interesting. Do you understand clearly what I mean to say? Size, structure, and distribution of human population. Are these 3 words very clear to you or not?
No, sir.
Okay. Now, size is very simple. Suppose, just take it's very simple. In India, we have a census of population system which we conduct every 10 years. I hope this was a part of BA Part 1, population. You know, census. Every 10 years, we count the number of people. And that gives us the size of population, what it was 10 years ago, what it is now. Number 1, that is size of population. And we have so many ideas connected to size, the growth rate of population, decadal and annual, and so many things. That I'm not mentioning right now because it will deviate our point. That is size of population. How many people are living in a country or a state or a district and so on. Size, this is size. Second point was the structure of population. The structure means mainly 2 things. Gender structure, number 1. In this size of population, what is the percentage of female population and what is the percentage of male population? That is gender structure. Number 2, age structure. Age structure. How many, what is percent population in this total size is low age group, middle age group, high age group, etc., etc. If you want to understand this point in detail, there is one simple thing you can read, population pyramid. Population pyramid gives you the gender and age structure of population. That is your homework today. Homework, very important. So many questions are asked in IAS examination also. And a couple of years back, there was a very interesting question was asked. Do you know anything about pyramid, population pyramid? It is also part of geography.
Yes, I study.
Yes, sir.
The question was, I'm just giving you this question of IAS. In population pyramid, female population is shown on.
The right side.
Yes, right side on x-axis. And male population left side on x-axis. And on y-axis, we show age groups, 5 years age groups, 0 to 4, 5 to 9, 10 to 14, and so on. And since with advancement of age, deaths take place. Therefore, when you move higher on the pyramid, both the sides of pyramid slope towards the point at top. That gives you a triangular or pyramid shaped diagram that is known as population pyramid. It is very interesting and very important because in India, in recent past, the shape of pyramid is changing because of reduced birth rate and reduced total fertility rate in India. The bottom size is shrinking. And the higher side, top side is little widening because of increase in life expectancy, longevity. That is why very pyramid. That second part I mentioned, that was the structure of population. And third part is distribution. Distribution means this total population is distributed in which areas. The most important is rural and urban distribution. What is the percentage of rural population? What is urban population? And that is very important from exemption point of view because in your competitive examination, suppose in IAS, there is a component called urbanization. That is, unless you study the structure of population, urban, rural, and changes, and so many socio-economic issues related to that urban population, you will not very clearly understand this. So that is one thing is urban and rural distribution. And then again, you have different categories of population. That is population living in metropolitan cities, population living in cities, population living in semi-urban areas, in urban areas and the rural areas. Then we have different categories of this population division. And in India, we divide this distribution in 6 different levels of population size. Then you have again population in northeast region, southern region, eastern region, western region, central region of India. In that way also you study population. If studying for Indian context, or you also study in a global context. Okay, what percent population is in African countries, in Asian countries, and so on. I hope you have got a very brief meaning of the term demography. Little out of context. Okay?
Yes, sir.
Now
Yes,
tell
sir.
me, because he asked one question, I'm coming to now his question. Because whenever you ask some question, I just want to give you some peripheral, some attached dimension also, so that you can understand in a better way, and it increases your knowledge also. Tell me, again I'm repeating, demography is a scientific study of human population focusing on 3 dimensions, that is size, structure, and distribution. And I have given you meaning of these 3 terms very briefly, very, very briefly. Now tell me, the size, structure, distribution, will it all 3 remain unchanged with passage of time, or they keep on changing? Just give me answer of all these 3.
Keep on changing.
Keep on changing.
Keep on changing.
Changing, sir.
Now, if you say that keep on changing, then what are the reasons or factors behind this change? There will be some factors responsible for such changes. If you say these are changing, naturally your answer is correct.
Sir, climate.
Not climate, not climate, not climate.
Development in
Migration. But
Migration.
No,
Sir, birth and migration.
no,
birth.
let me tell you.
Birth.
Let me tell you first. All of you are quite near. There are 5 demographic processes. 5. There are 5 demographic processes which continuously play their role, and these processes actually are responsible for the change in size, the change in structure, and change in distribution. There are 5 demographic processes. Number 1 is fertility, or you can say in simple terms, births. Number 2 is mortality, or you can simply say it's deaths. Number 3 is marriage, that he asked the question. And for last 10 minutes, I am trying to come to his question with these so many examples. I'm again repeating the 5 demographic processes. Number 1 is fertility, or you can write in your own words, births. Number 2 is mortality, or you can say deaths. Number 3 is marriage. Number 3 is marriage. Number 4 is migration. And number 5 is social mobility. These 5 demographic processes continuously operate, and they affect the structure, size, and distribution of population. And marriage is one of the factors behind this change, and that was your question. Do you understand these 5 demographic processes? How they
Social
affect?
mobility.
Last one है समझा दीजिए.
कौन सा?
Sir, last one explain.
Last one, social mobility.
Yes, sir.
देखिए, इसमें से हर शब्द जो मैंने कहा बहुत डिटेल्ड है. जैसे आपने कहा mortality, मैंने कहा simply you understand death. But if I want to define mortality, there is infant mortality, there is child mortality, there is maternal mortality. There are so many mortality rates are also there. If you say fertility, there is age-specific fertility rates, there is total fertility rates, it is gross fertility rate. There are so many fertility rates also. But that will become a little technical. That is why I wanted to tell you that at your level, just understand fertility, mortality, marriage, migration, and social mobility. Now, some of you have asked what is social mobility and how that affects the population size, population distribution, and population structure. Now just tell me, although I have mentioned it earlier also, when we talk about infrastructure, what do you mean by this? It's a very simple term, infrastructure, but what do you mean by this?
Sir, 3 type of infrastructure: physical, social, economic.
Yeah, I have told you this also earlier. And I believe you understand each component very clearly.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
What is the third point? You told it is physical, it is financial, it is social.
Social and economic.
What do you mean by this? What do you mean by this? Social.
So like hospitals, schools,
Yeah.
which help in social.
Yeah. That is health infrastructure, health services, education infrastructure, education services. And because of these services, health infrastructure, individuals and families or households, they also move within or between social groups in a society. And it is a change in social status also. This social mobility or change can be seen in vertical context or in horizontal context, relative context also, or total context also. There are different types. There can be intragenerational or as well as intergenerational mobility also. Or the most popular example of social mobility is occupational mobility. Because of occupations, we move from one place to other place. This mobility can be for education. Education. People move from one place to other place for better medical or better educational opportunities. This social mobility can be for urban benefits of living standards. This mobility can also to acquire skills and training which are not available in a one particular place. For that, you move to other place. Basically, social mobility is caused by the objective of progress. That is simply the meaning of social mobility. Is it clear now? Is it clear now what is social mobility?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
That also changes, and if you link this social mobility to your original point that we're discussing, that I have also mentioned here, you look at the last point, transport, communication, education, health, etc. They also act as social mobility. I hope it is simple now.
Yes, sir.
We have discussed other things, but it's very connected to our basic objective. Now this dualism actually creates two types of effects, which are very popular and which are very simple. First one is called backwash effect, and second one is called spread effect. Now I'm coming first to backwash effect. Okay, what is backwash effect? I have just mentioned briefly. Backwash effect means divergent process. It is divergent process that retards growth in poor areas due to lack of external economies. You can say backwash effect is unfavorable effect. Whether you look at backwash effect within the country or you look at this among countries also. And I have mentioned a number of points here. And if you look at this simple diagram at the bottom right corner, you can understand the meaning of backwash effect. In the center, I have mentioned growth center. Growth center. Growth center can be what we have given as an example. It can be Maharashtra, or it can be Mumbai, it can be Bengaluru, it can be Gurugram, etc. Now, there are arrows pointing towards growth centers means since growth centers are developed regions, developed areas, therefore from other areas, capital, labor, they will also migrate to these areas because growth center is actually a pulling factor It is a magnet to attract people and capital from other regions. The growth center can also be discussed in terms of world, where people from less developed countries move to developed countries. People from less developed areas move to developed areas. They are known as growth centers. Why? Because level of development and growth, level of opportunities are much, much higher in these centers. Now, I have mentioned so many examples. It means just go on reading all these points, but I mentioned number of points, and tell me whether you have any problem to understand what is backwash and how growth centers attract, because they are beneficial. Just
Sir,
please,
demonstration.
demonstration effect. Demonstration effect. The last point, you have come to last point. If you are asking last point, means do you understand all these points I have mentioned earlier? More than a dozen points I have mentioned here, which give you very, very many ideas. Before coming to your question demonstration, tell me, is any other point is difficult to understand? Backwash means I have mentioned unfavorable effect. Divergent process means same, backwash, that is retard growth in poor areas due to lack of external economies. And I believe the term external economies was discussed earlier by Dr. Sridhar Satyakam. He has discussed in detail what is external economies, what is social overhead capital. He has discussed all these things in detail, I believe. There should not be any confusion in that term in the context of divergent process. Is there any question except the last one, last point?
Sir, outmoded system of education.
That is also very simple, very simple, outmoded system of education. Okay, 2 points you have asked.
Sir, creation of elite ideological growth.
Elite ideological growth. Elite class means high class in society, elite. They're a higher strata of the social system, elite class. In Hindi, we call it Abhijatya Varg, Abhijatya. So, backwash means that people who are at lower level in society, they want to go to a higher ladder of social system so that they are also known as elite class. Abhijatya. High respectable people in society. That is known as elite class. So elite ideological growth is also created. Is it simple now? Elite ideological growth?
Got it, sir.
Okay. Now coming to the last point, demonstration effect. It is very simple. Now tell me one simple question. Why people want to wear diamond jewelry? Tell me what is the reason? Diamond jewelry.
So mostly people to show off.
Yes, because diamond has no usefulness. Is it create any useful result in your life? Diamond. Suppose you wear a diamond ring. What benefits? Will it increase your mental power? Your
No, sir.
understanding, your skill? Is it useful?
No, sir.
Or it
No,
will
sir.
it will remove your thirst or
No,
your
sir.
hunger? Nothing.
No benefit. Sir.
Then why people like to wear diamond ornament?
Because
Simple.
it is scarce.
There are so many scarce things, so many things which are scarce.
And it looks good and it gives you prestigious feeling.
Yeah, that is demonstration. Because this is a commodity of which you want to demonstrate. Why do you want to demonstrate? Because it is costly. It is very high priced. That is why that we want to show off. And demonstration effect is very, very common in less developed countries. They want to show off. In Hindi, it is called प्रदर्शन प्रभाव. आप बहुत चीजें प्रदर्शित करना चाहते हैं. It's a very common feeling of common people. तो कहते हैं आपके पास एक मोबाइल हैंडसेट है और वो एप्पल का है, तो आप चाहते हैं कि लोग देखें कि आपके पास एप्पल का हैंडसेट है, और कोई XYZ होगा आप नहीं दिखाना चाहेंगे. ऐसा होता है कि नहीं, बताइए.
यस सर, होता है.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
बिल्कुल होता है ये. People
They want to show
people
their
want to have
knowledge.
Mercedes car. भले ही वो
They have
सेकंड
more
हैंड
money.
लोगो मर्सिडीज लगाओ तो डेमोन्स्ट्रेशन का मर्सिडीज चलते हैं हम.
Sir,
That is demonstration.
mirror fancy to
Yes,
Apple
sir.
phone.
There are so many examples in everyday life that people want to show off. तो that वो कहेंगे, देखिए हम लोग कितना कहते हैं, देखिए इंडिया में कहते हैं, अरे खासकर पंजाब में उनके अपनी लैंग्वेज में, उनका बेटा कनाडा गया हुआ है. कभी नहीं कहेंगे उनकी मलेशिया गया हुआ है, नेपाल गया हुआ, कोई नहीं बोलेगा. अमेरिका में है. That gives you demonstration कि जो वहां पर है, वो very high profile people. That is demonstration effect, and because demonstration effect, people want to move toward the growth center to demonstrate their living standard and their level in society. Is it okay now? Backwash effect?
Yes, sir.
Or any other point in this, all what I have written in detail? It's very extensive what I have written here. चलिए, तो
Sir,
backwash. Yes.
production of
बताएं.
primary product is how is in the point.
प्रोडक्शन ऑफ प्राइमरी प्रोडक्ट्स. देखिए इसको आप अगर लिंक करें थोड़ा सा और ऊपर से, बुलेट नंबर 3, एक्सेस ऑफ रिच नेशंस टू स्केर्स रॉ मटेरियल्स. रॉ मटेरियल्स यानी जो ग्रोथ सेंटर्स हैं वहां पर जो बैकवर्ड सेंटर्स हैं उनसे रॉ मटेरियल लिया जाता है. Is it okay? First point, the rich nations have greater access to raw materials from poor nations. Because nations, although they are having raw materials, but they lack some capital, lack some skilled human workforce. They lack technology to utilize those raw materials in a best possible way. Therefore, rich nations have the greater access to scarce raw materials from poor countries at cheaper rates also, because those raw materials are in spite of in abundant quantity in the poor countries, but they remain unutilized or less utilized. Number one is clear. Then when they import those raw materials in rich nations, then it is used in the production of primary products. Primary products means, suppose this example is, suppose a big center that you understand very simply, a big centers is acquiring raw materials, say potato from the backward regions, say villages, and converting this potato into potato chips. That is the primary product. Again, that is manufactured primary raw material. And then this produced through food processing, whatever product is made, that is again sold back to the backward areas. Because backward areas were not even qualified to move towards the food processing. Because food processing industries are also confined to mainly developed regions. That is the simplest example of primary products and raw material interlinkage. Because the backward areas or backward countries will only import the costly these products, but not very costly high technology products. That is primary. Not high technology manufactured products. So they usually export these things to the backward regions. That is known as primary product production. Is it clear now?
Yes, sir.
Any other point you want to discuss?
Imported products in third world, sir.
That is, third world means backward at third world. First world, second world, third world. There are three types of worlds that we use regularly, these terms. First world basically means developed capitalist structure of first world. That I have mentioned in very second lecture. We are talking about development. Second world means developed socialist countries. And third world means the mixed economies which are less developed. That is backward countries. That same thing I'm mentioning here, that the developed countries who import raw materials, who attract the human labor the products, and those products are exported back to the third world or underdeveloped countries or regions within a country. That is, imposes backward products in third world or backward countries. That is third world countries. They acquire raw materials, but they give back products to these countries, and that creates benefits and profits for the developed regions. Is it okay now?
Yes, sir.
Or any other doubt? Swiftly, I wanted to complete this, but I don't think it is possible for me right now. Okay, next is spread effect. Backwash was unfavorable effect, spread is favorable effect. That is a convergent process. with the single economic expansion, new growth stimulus might induce other regions. Spread effect means where benefits are spreading, moving to other regions also. For example, I have given 2-3 examples. Growth of industrial localities have some good effects on other areas also. Suppose there is in a particular area or a particular country, there is industrial hub, industrial localities which have a high growth, but the benefits of the growth will not confine to only those industrial areas, but the benefits will also spread other areas also. Suppose a motor car industry producing large number of motor vehicles in a particular area, but this industry will also create favorable effects to other areas which are providing, suppose, some components to this motor industry. Suppose in one related areas, they are manufacturing bulbs. Some areas they are manufacturing paints. In some areas they are manufacturing wire. In some areas they are manufacturing tire tubes. So those areas will also benefit because of the growth of these industrial localities. And not only this, but it will create opportunities for health facilities, education facilities also. That is known as spread effect. Is it okay now? First point.
Yes, sir.
The benefits will expand to other areas also. That is known as spread. That I have mentioned simply in the diagram mentioned right side. The whole region will experience advantages effect regarding demand, market, technology, etc. Because it will not confine to only a particular locality, but it will also benefit the region. And when there is increased demand, it will benefit other regions also. And ultimately, it will increase in per capita income also. That is known as spread effects. Favorable effects, beneficial effects means spread. Unfavorable means backlash. I have mentioned very briefly what is spread and what is backwash. Have you understood these two points?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Now tell me, are these two effects found in each and every region or each and every country or not? Suppose there is a backward country, suppose there is a backward region or backward country. What is your observation about these two effects? Do you think backward country only backwash effect will be there, or only spread effect will be there, or both will be there, or no effect will be there? Now tell me, what is your answer?
So backward
Both will be there.
backwash
Both
effect
will be
is
there,
ज्यादा dominant होगा.
नहीं, मैंने डोमिनेंट नहीं पूछा, मैंने पहले सवाल पूछा आपसे कि कोई बैकवर्ड रीजन है या कोई डेवलप्ड रीजन है. दोनों रीजन हो सकते हैं. बैकवर्ड की मैं बात पहले कर रहा हूं. उस रीजन में दोनों होंगे या कोई एक होगा, या दोनों नहीं होंगे, या दोनों नहीं होंगे, या कोई भी एक नहीं होगा? बताइए, ये आंसर पहले बताइए.
दोनों होंगे सर.
दोनों होंगे सर.
दोनों
होगा.
दोनों होंगे. लेकिन इन दोनों के लेवल में डिफरेंस होता है. अब बस वही आपको पूरा थ्योरी समझा देगा. दैट इज नेक्स्ट पॉइंट, बैकवॉश वर्सेस स्प्रेड. अब मैंने लिखा है रीजनल इनइक्वालिटी आर मच वाइडर इन पुअरर देन इन रिचर कंट्रीज. इनइक्वालिटीज तो हर जगह होती है, लेकिन इनइक्वालिटी जो निर्धन देश हैं, जो बैकवर्ड देश हैं, उनमें ज्यादा होती है बजाय डेवलप्ड रीजन्स के. एंड रीजनल इनइक्वालिटी आर इंक्रीजिंग इन पुअरर कंट्रीज एंड डिमिनिशिंग रिचर कंट्रीज. तो मिडल का ये मानना था कि जो रीजनल इनइक्वालिटीज हैं वो पुअर कंट्रीज में बढ़ती जा रही हैं और रिच कंट्रीज में ये कम हो रही हैं. और उसके पीछे बहुत सारे इंस्टीट्यूशनल फैक्टर्स हैं, सोशल फैक्टर्स हैं, पॉलिटिकल फैक्टर्स हैं. नाउ यू लुक एट दिस. मैंने सबसे नीचे लिखा है रेड से, दैट इज क्वाइट सिमिलर टू द सेंटेंस ऑफ नक्स. नेक्स्ट सेंटेंस था, अ कंट्री इज पुअर बिकॉज इट इज पुअर. And here I have mentioned a region is backward because it is backward.
Yes, sir.
Now look at these three simple points. जो आपके बीच में लिखा हुआ है, ऊपर लिखा है इकोनॉमी. लिखा है कि नहीं, बैकवर्ड इकोनॉमी. नाउ एरो, डाउनवर्ड एरो, सी डाउनवर्ड एरो इन बैकवर्ड इकोनॉमी, देयर इज स्ट्रॉन्ग बैकवॉश इफेक्ट but a weak spread effect. I hope now you understand this yellow point between these two very clearly.
Yes, sir.
Each country will have both the effects, but in backward economy, backwash will be much stronger than spread effects. Spread effect will be weak, backwash will be stronger. Now, moving again downward, if spread effect is weak and backwash is strong, then what will result? Result will be, it will remain a backward economy. बताइए पहला पॉइंट सही स्टार्ट हुआ कि नहीं? From backward economy to backward economy, moving downward, and again moving upward. Economy is backward, moving upward arrows. Every backward economy will have a strong backwash effect and weak spread effect. And combination of these two, when backwash is powerful, strong spread is weaker, that will keep a backward economy in the state of backwardness. That is why I have mentioned at the bottom, a region is backward because it is backward. And there are institutional, social, political factors also. Institutional means economic institutions also, financial institutions also, all are responsible. Because of these factors, there is a movement of labor force, there is a movement of capital towards developed regions. That is why backward regions remain backward. Is it clear? Very simple? Or any doubt?
No, sir, clear है.
And दूसरी तरफ जो डेवलप्ड रीजन है उनका क्या होगा? वो और डेवलप हो
सर
जाएंगे.
वहाँ पे स्ट्रॉन्ग बैक.
हाँ,
Strong
वो
spread.
और डेवलप हो जाएंगे, वो और डेवलप हो जाएंगे because they are able to attract. Now the next diagram you can understand this circular causation, cumulative, more simply. That is cumulative causation. You start from top where I have written developed, rich in resource infrastructure. जो डेवलप्ड रीजन है उनके पास रिसोर्स ज्यादा हैं, सोशल, पॉलिटिकल, इंस्टीट्यूशनल, सब रिसोर्स ज्यादा हैं, रिसोर्स इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर ज्यादा है. तो जाहिर सी बात है इसकी वजह से इनफ्लो ऑफ लेबर एंड कैपिटल टुवर्ड्स दिस रीजन होगा. It will attract more investment and bottom you corrected job opportunity, and job opportunity will be more in developed regions, and economic activities will be more in these regions. And if you look at from both the sides, that will create inflow of capital and labor to these regions. If you move clockwise, developed regions which are rich in resource and infrastructure, they will attract capital and labor. They will attract more investment. They will create more job opportunities. They will promote economic activities. And because of these economic activities, again, there will be inflow of more labor and capital, and they will become more developed. Now to move to top point, more developed. That is cumulative. That will keep on moving. Spiral higher and higher and higher. From developed to more developed through this circular causation. Because developed regions, that is A for developed regions, they are able to attract capital, labor, investment, job, activities, etc. They are attractive centers. They are core centers, and they are countries, and they, with passage of time, they become more and more developed in a cumulative way. Tell me, is it okay? Correct?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Because this is because of more powerful spread effect and weak backwash effect in these regions. If you have any question to ask, just ask me, then I will answer that question. Or we can move this regional differences in some different component, what Middle has mentioned as core, peripheral, and semi-peripheral nations. Now, A means the rich or the growth center, core countries, developed region, etc., which Middle has classified as. Middle's model can be used to understand the perpetuation of the development gaps and divergences between North and South, or between core, that is industrialized, and periphery, the primary producing countries, raw material countries, very low technology products countries, etc. I hope you understand North and South. What is North, what is South? In this context of development gaps?
So which is more developed or less developed?
No, tell me why you're using the term North and South.
So because these are just opposite, I think.
Opposite can be left and right also, right? But where is North and South?
Yes, sir.
Sir, top and down.
वो ठीक है लेकिन हम लोग नॉर्थ एंड साउथ क्यों कह रहे हैं? अक्सर देखिए न्यूज़पेपर में हेडिंग आती है द सेंसेक्स मूव्ड नॉर्थवर्ड. इसका मतलब क्या? सेंसेक्स कैपिटल मार्केट, बॉम्बे स्टॉक एक्सचेंज, सेंसेक्स मूव नॉर्थवर्ड, इसका मतलब क्या होता है?
Upward, sir.
Upward. Increase या upward?
Why upward? देखिए, whenever you draw a map, you write north at the top, south at the bottom, then east and west also. तो आप डायग्राम बनाते हैं ज्योग्राफी में, तो चार डायरेक्शन बनाते हैं कि नहीं?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
East west is x-axis, north south is y-axis. And y-axis you write north at the top, south at the bottom. Negative y is south, positive y is north. Similarly, on x-axis, move from origin point 0. Right is east, and left is west. That is north, east, south, west. हम लोग कहते हैं ना कि प्रोडक्शन पॉसिबिलिटी कर्व must move to northeast direction. It means move outward, more output. That is production possibility curve. That was also a component of BA Part 1, microeconomics. That is why we write north. North means higher, means developed countries, rich countries, high per capita income. South means lower or underdeveloped countries, less per capita income, etc. Where socioeconomic backwardness is there, and north means the rich countries or the high developed countries there. And sometimes we also say that is the northern hemisphere and southern hemisphere also, but that is not exactly, that is for geography. But for economics point of view, we are saying this north-south division. We say north-south dialogue of the countries. South-south dialogue with the group of countries. If there is a group of countries or poor nations, suppose say use SAARC nations, that is South-South dialogue. If you say G7, it is North-North dialogue. Got my point? A group of rich countries, group of poor countries, or dialogue between these two countries, then we say we have North-South dialogue to solve the economic issue of the world. Therefore, we use North and South. Now, middle say that is a divergence between rich and backward, or between industrialized or periphery countries. And he has used the term core nations and periphery nations. Core nations means the north, which are high income, industrialized, they control global market, they have skilled labor force, they dominate and exploit peripheral countries, means backward countries for labor and raw materials. They are not core countries, core nations, rich nations. I think these points are very simple. Core nations, north nations, industrialized nations, rich areas, developed areas, developed countries, they are core. And they exploit peripheral countries. And what is periphery? There are two types of periphery. One is semi-periphery and one is periphery. Middle income, semi-periphery, low income, periphery. Semi-periphery includes middle income countries, industrializing countries, industrializing, not industrialized. Industrialized means core. Mostly capitalist, middle level of countries, they share characteristics of both core and periphery countries, and they are moving towards becoming core nation. They are moving, middle level of countries moving towards higher. And what is the backward or low level? Periphery, low income, less skilled labor force. They export labor and natural resources to core nations. And they depend upon core countries for their capital requirements. Backward regions, backward countries are low income areas where you find less skilled labor force, and they basically export their labor. They migrate to developed regions, core regions, and their natural resources also exported to those regions that I have mentioned earlier also. And they depend upon core countries for their capital requirements also. There are three categories of countries, but mainly two: periphery, and within periphery you have semi-periphery and periphery nations. The periphery means backward, core means developed. I believe that this should be very simple. And what we have discussed so far in this context of causation, next diagram will make it very, very clear and simple about why we are mentioning these types of categories. The core nations, which I mentioned in right, green, and periphery, semi-periphery, which I mentioned left, blue. Now you look at the top point. From periphery and semi-periphery nations, cheap labor and raw materials migrate to core nations. That we have discussed in length. And in core nations, they manufacture high profit consumption goods. And those goods are exported from core nations to periphery and semi-periphery nations. That what we were mentioning, that circular diagram also a cumulative causation. I mentioned core regions, core nations will import basic raw materials, as I give an example of potato, and they will export consumption good like potato chips. Is it very simple and clear?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
It
Yes,
should be
sir.
very simple. Now we understand it should be very simple and very in simple diagrams. I have mentioned this structure, and this same thing I can discuss in other type of model, that is, you look at periphery, semi-periphery, and core. Same model in a different circular presentation that I have mentioned. From core, goods, yellow, are moving towards semi-periphery and periphery nations or regions. And from those regions, resources are coming to core. बहुत आसान होना चाहिए ये.
Yes, sir.
Now, I will just have two more diagrams to conclude this model. Why the core areas, developed areas, are attractive. In those areas, you always find new industries, technological development. Because of social economic opportunities, infrastructure development is high. Therefore, they will create the situation for setting up new industries. Now, new industries means more jobs. You look at this anti-clockwise. New industries will create more jobs. Very simple. And for more jobs, there will be inflow of population to these areas also. What type of population will come to these areas? Who are skilled, more skilled, to get opportunities in these new industries. Again, coming back, new industries means more job opportunities. Then population flow will be toward these new industries, and the more skilled labor force will move to these new industries. It is a spread effect. And it will create backwash in those areas from where people have migrated. It means in those backward areas, only unskilled labor will be there, because skilled labor has migrated to new industries. And when population inflow will be towards these areas, they will have more income, and that will result in rise in demand. More population, more income, more demand. And the demand is more, it means increased investment will take place. To meet this demand, there will be increase in investment. And not only investment in industries, but investment in services sector also. Variety of services, banking services, transportation services, communication services, education and health services, etc. These all will develop due to there will be more investment in these areas also. And that will create more wealth in these areas. And because of more wealth, more demand, more expenditure, more wealth, more output, it will also increase government's tax revenue. And when there is more revenue for the government, then government will also invest to improve the infrastructure of these regions. And when infrastructure will improve, it means more new industries will be set up there. And when more industries are set up, it will also create opportunities for setting up of large number of ancillary industries, Sahayak Udyam. And these ancillary industries will also create external economies for these new industries, and new industries will benefit further. And again, more and more new industry will come up, creating more jobs, more info population, rise in demand, more investment, service, etc., etc. It will keep on creating more and more spread effect for developed regions, and cumulatively they will move upward. Please look at the diagram once more and tell me, is there any doubt in any component to understand this Middle's model? कोई सवाल है आपका?
मोर स्किल्ड लेबर सर, यहाँ पर थोड़ा सा दिक्कत हो रहा है।
क्यों दिक्कत होगी बताइए? ये बताइए मुझे, बस सोच के बताइए इसको, यहाँ इस अपने से लिंक कीजिए। आपने कहा कि हमारे बैकवर्ड रीजन से लोग बेंगलुरु जा रहे हैं। आपने कहा ना, अभी एग्जांपल दिया बेंगलुरु जा रहा है, आपने कहा बेंगलुरु जा रहे हैं। बेंगलुरु कौन जा रहा है? एक अनस्किल्ड वर्कर जा रहा है, या जो आईटी सेक्टर के स्किल्ड वर्कर है? कौन जाएगा बेंगलुरु?
अनस्किल्ड सर।
स्किल्ड।
हाँ, अनस्किल्ड। बेंगलुरु इज आईटी हब, पीपल फ्रॉम डिफरेंट पार्ट्स ऑफ कंट्री। स्किल्ड जाएगा ना, जो स्किल्ड होगा उसी की अपॉर्चुनिटी होगी वहां पर। जब स्किल्ड लोग वहां जा रहे हैं, तो जो बैकवर्ड एरिया है वहां पे कौन से लोग बचेंगे? जो अनस्किल्ड होंगे। स्किल्ड तो वहां चले गए, तो यहां तो अनस्किल्ड ही रह जाएगा ना फिर, क्योंकि उन न्यू इंडस्ट्रीज के लिए अपॉर्चुनिटी स्किल्ड वर्कर्स की है, जो ज्यादा स्किल्ड हैं। अनस्किल्ड की आवश्यकता नहीं है वहां पर। ये बात क्लियर हुई कि नहीं बताइए? जिन्होंने सवाल पूछा था बताया, उनको ये बात साफ हुई? अपने एग्जांपल से सोच के देखिए।
यस सर।
तो स्किल्ड वहां जाएगा, ये स्प्रेड इफेक्ट है। और बैकवर्ड ये है कि जो रीजन बैकवर्ड है वहां पर रिमेनिंग वही लोग रह जाएंगे जो अनस्किल्ड हैं, जो उन न्यू इंडस्ट्रीज की अपॉर्चुनिटीज को अवेल नहीं कर सकते, वो वहां रह जाएंगे। बिकॉज न्यू इंडस्ट्री विल अट्रैक्ट ओनली द स्किल्ड पीपल। अगर आप किसी कंट्री में भी जाते हैं, तो कंट्री में आपको, मान लिया आपने यूएस या इंग्लैंड के लिए आप अप्लाई करते हैं वीजा के लिए, दे विल नॉट अलाउ द पीपल हु आर नॉट स्किल्ड, नॉट यूजफुल फॉर देम, दे विल रिजेक्ट योर वीजा। They will give their visa only the people who are skilled and they are useful for their economy. This is the visa system also. That is how internal and external migration takes place. आसान होनी चाहिए बात ये अब तो। Any other point? I hope you understand ancillary industries. आसान होगा ना, सहायक उद्यम। जो मैंने एग्जांपल दिया ना, कि अगर एक न्यू इंडस्ट्री है मोटर कार के लिए, तो उसकी एंसिलरी इंडस्ट्री है बल्ब बनाने वाले, पेंट बनाने वाले, वायर बनाने वाले इंडस्ट्री जो सहायक हैं, वो सहायक उद्यम है जो मेन इंडस्ट्री को अपना प्रोडक्ट सप्लाई करते हैं। दैट सप्लाई चेन गोज थ्रू एंसिलरी इंडस्ट्री टू न्यू इंडस्ट्रीज, बिग इंडस्ट्रीज। इज इट ओके नाउ?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Now tell me, why more skilled labor will move towards the growth centers? No, why they will to backward areas? जो लेबरर का माइग्रेशन है, लेबरर का मतलब यहाँ पर अनस्किल्ड वर्कर्स से नहीं है, मतलब है वो जो क्वालिफाइड लेबरर्स हैं, वो क्यों माइग्रेट कर रहे हैं वहां पर? क्या क्या उनको अट्रैक्ट कर रहा है?
सर क्योंकि उन्हें यहाँ पे इनकम मिलेगी, अपॉर्चुनिटी मिलेगी,
बेटर लिविंग स्टैंडर्ड के लिए जाते हैं।
Yes, now you
It's a
compare,
decent life.
now you compare the movement of people, movement of workers from one place to another, एक backward और एक developed. The last diagram is that. कि स्प्रेड इफेक्ट क्या है और बैकवॉश इफेक्ट क्या है। Now you start demand and supply. Demand and supply of people or workers, left side and right side. बहुत इंटरेस्टिंग डायग्राम ने बनाया है। लेफ्ट साइड में डायग्राम है, वाई एक्सिस पर हमने लिखा है W1, दैट इज वेजेस, और राइट साइड में लिखा है हमने बैकवॉश, अगेन W1, दैट इज वेजेस। लेफ्ट साइड देखिए पॉइंट नंबर 1 वेयर डिमांड एंड सप्लाई interact at wage level W. Is it clear? Very clear? Left side diagram.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Blue demand as supply, equilibrium point at 1, that is wage is OW, level of wage. Suppose that is common in two different regions. Again, you come to right diagram, you see the same point 1 is written here. और राइट साइड डायग्राम अगेन सप्लाई एंड डिमांड इक्विलिब्रियम एट पॉइंट 1, दैट इज इक्वल वेज रेट्स। ये बात समझ में आई, क्लियर हुई बिल्कुल? डिमांड सप्लाई लेफ्ट डायग्राम में, डिमांड सप्लाई राइट डायग्राम में, दोनों में डिमांड सप्लाई का इंटरेक्शन से वेज रेट इज W बिकॉज ऑफ पॉइंट 1 और पॉइंट 1 दोनों में एक लेवल पर है। यू कंपेयर बोथ डायग्राम्स लेफ्ट एंड राइट। बताइए बात क्लियर है या नहीं?
क्लियर है सर।
Yes, sir.
बिल्कुल क्लियर है।
Yes, sir.
Now you look at, but because spread effect, core centers are more powerful. Spread effect is more powerful. New industries are coming up. There is more demand for labor, high living standard. तो इससे डिमांड जो है रिच एरियाज में लेबर की बढ़ेगी या नहीं बढ़ेगी?
बढ़ेगी।
लास्ट डायग्राम था ना, न्यू इंडस्ट्रीज, लास्ट डायग्राम यही तो मैंने लिखा था, न्यू इंडस्ट्रीज मींस मोर जॉब्स, पॉपुलेशन इनफ्लो, मोर स्किल, डिमांड तो है ना ये। तो दिस द रिच कोर एरियाज, कोर नेशंस, डेवलप्ड नेशंस में डिमांड बढ़ेगी या नहीं बढ़ेगी लेबर्स की?
से इंक्रीज होगी।
अब देखिए अगेन कम टू लेफ्ट साइड, ना इट मींस डिमांड कर्व विल shift from D to D1. रेड लाइन देखिए, रेड लाइन आ गया राइट?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
आ गया। नाउ डिमांड बढ़ने के कारण अगर सप्लाई इमीडिएटली नहीं बढ़ेगी ना, इनफ्लो होगा तब बढ़ेगी, तो नाउ इक्विलिब्रियम बिटवीन D1 and S, लेफ्ट साइड विल बी एट पॉइंट 2।
Yes, sir.
पॉइंट 2 पे होगा ना, तो बताइए वेज रेट W1 हो जाएगा कि नहीं?
हो जाएगा सर।
यस सर।
हो जाएगा, बिल्कुल बढ़िया। तो अब देखिए, नाउ यू कंपेयर W1 वेज रेट लेफ्ट साइड डायग्राम एंड W वेज रेट इन राइट साइड डायग्राम। राइट साइड में तो अभी तक 1 था ना लेवल, इक्विवेलेंट पॉइंट 1 था ना पॉइंट पर राइट साइड वाले में।
Yes, sir.
यानी वेज रेट W था, लेकिन जब स्प्रेड इफेक्ट से वेज डेवलप्ड जब W1 हो गया पॉइंट नंबर 2 लेफ्ट साइड, तो बताइए W1 हायर W से कि नहीं? W1 level is
Yes,
higher
sir.
than W.
Yes.
यस सर।
Now this will attract the skilled laborers from backward areas to migrate to developed areas because of spread effect. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Now, because of this S1 movement, now supply of labor will increase in developed regions.
Yes, sir.
Now, see the new change. New change will be demand has increased to D1, left side diagram. Focus on left side diagram. Demand is to D1, red line, and supply is also increased to S1, yellow line. because of migration of workers from less developed to developed regions, now there will be more supply of workers in developed regions. They migrated just because of higher wages in developed regions, and new equilibrium will be D1 and S1, that is point number 3, left side diagram. बताइए बात क्लियर है कि नहीं? बिल्कुल.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
लिटिल डिफिकल्ट बट वेरी इजी. जब तक लेबर माइग्रेट नहीं हुए थे तब तक सप्लाई तो एस था ना वहां पर.
Yes, sir.
तब तो सप्लाई एस था, सप्लाई कर एस था. लेकिन जब माइग्रेट हो गया सप्लाई बढ़ गई मतलब राइट साइड मूवमेंट यानी S1 हो गया. तो S1 और D1 डिमांड बढ़ गई, सप्लाई भी बढ़ गई, तो क्लियर पॉइंट विल बी 3, पॉइंट नंबर 3. इतनी बात समझ में आई कि नहीं बताइए पहले?
Yes, sir.
Very interesting diagram, but little confusing also. Just look at each point very clearly. I'm again repeating, coming to first point. Initially, लेफ्ट साइड के डायग्राम और राइट साइड डायग्राम को देखेंगे तो डिमांड और सप्लाई का इक्विलिब्रियम दोनों में पॉइंट वन यहां पर लिखा है मैंने. 1 इज द फर्स्ट इक्विलिब्रियम पॉइंट, एंड बोथ in both the regions there is OW wage rate which is equal in both the regions. इसमें क्या तो नहीं है?
No, sir.
1-1. Now developed regions में new industries, new opportunities will come up. Reasons बहुत सारे मैंने बताए. तो because of the demand of laborers will increase in developed regions. And demand curve, left side diagram, demand curve which was D blue will move up to D1 red. D1 red. Is it okay now? Left side.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
When demand of laborers will go up, D1, but supply has not yet changed. Supply not yet changed. Demand has increased. The new equilibrium between new demand, that is D1, and original supply, that is S, will be at point number 2, equilibrium point number 2. And because it is a higher level of equilibrium, the wage rate will move at W1 from W. बताइए बात क्लियर हुई कि नहीं? अब लेफ्ट डायग्राम में 1, 2.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Now, अब ये W1 जो है वो हायर वेज है, तो पीपल, the skilled workers will migrate from backward regions to these regions because they are getting higher wage here. Left side फिर देखिए, left side पे ही, because W1 is higher than W and W is still prevailing wage rate in backward regions. वही अभी तक है वहां पर. तो जब people migrate करेंगे developed region में तो वहां सप्लाई बढ़ेगी कि नहीं लेबर की?
Yes, sir. बढ़ेगी.
Yes, sir.
सप्लाई बढ़ जाएगी. सप्लाई बढ़ गई है, डिमांड बढ़ गई है D1, सप्लाई बढ़ गई S1. लेफ्ट साइड डायग्राम. डिमांड तो बढ़ गई थी, पहले हमने D1 बात की, सप्लाई भी बढ़ गई. जब सप्लाई भी बढ़ जाएगी तो नया इक्विलिब्रियम पॉइंट 3 होगा कि नहीं?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
पॉइंट 3 होगा. पॉइंट 3 होगा यानी वेज W1 से कम लेवल पे आ गया, लेकिन इट इज स्टिल हायर देन W. बताइए 1, 2, 3 पॉइंट आप लेफ्ट डायग्राम में समझ गए कि नहीं बिल्कुल क्लियरली?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Now you look at right side. Workers बैकवर्ड रीजन से छोड़कर माइग्रेट करके डेवलप रीजन, जो अभी तक दिया, लेकिन जब यहां माइग्रेट कर जाएंगे बैकवर्ड रीजन से तो यहां सप्लाई कम हो जाएगी वर्कर्स की कि नहीं बैकवर्ड रीजन में?
यस सर, कम हो जाएगी.
जब कम हो जाएगी तो राइट साइड डायग्राम देखिए, अब तो सप्लाई एस से शिफ्ट होकर S1 हो गई, लेफ्ट कम हो गया. कम मतलब लेफ्ट साइड इंक्रीज में राइट साइड. तो बताइए बैकवर्ड रीजन में अवेलेबिलिटी ऑफ लेबर कम हो जाएगा कि नहीं?
यस सर.
देन कर्व विल मूव टू S1.
यस सर.
जब S1 होगा तो नया इक्विलिब्रियम पॉइंट 2 हो जाएगा, पॉइंट 2 राइट साइड पर पॉइंट 2 होगा कि नहीं?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
जब पॉइंट 2 होगा तो ये वेजेस यहां भी हाई हो जाएगा W1।
यस सर।
लेकिन अब देखिए असली कहानी ये है, लेकिन जब यहां पर वेज तो हायर हुआ लेकिन लोग माइग्रेट कर गए हैं डेवलप रीजन में, तो यहां पर इस हायर वेज पे डिमांड तो नहीं होगी ना। डिमांड कहां होगी, क्योंकि वहां पर इनकम ही नहीं है। इनकम कम है कि नहीं?
Yes, sir.
जब इनकम कम होगी तो डिमांड ऑफ गुड्स भी कम होगा या बढ़ जाएगा?
कम होगा।
कम होगा। जब कम होगा तो डिमांड कर्व विल आल्सो शिफ्ट टू लेफ्टवर्ड D1। पर कैपिटा इनकम
Yes,
कम
sir.
हो गई, प्रोडक्शन कम हो गया, डिमांड कम हो गई, मार्केट छोटा है, तो D से शिफ्ट हो जाएंगे D1। इज इट ओके?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
जब D1 हो जाएगा और नया S1 है, तो S1 और D1 का इक्विलिब्रियम अब पॉइंट नंबर 3 होगा।
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
It means again in backward area wage is again low, that is W level पर आ गए जहां पे आप थे पहले।
Yes,
Is it
sir.
okay? But अभी हमने लिखा लास्ट डायग्राम में, सॉरी, अभी हमने लास्ट डायग्राम में ये लिखा था कि यहां पर आप देखिए, न्यू इंडस्ट्रीज, मोर जॉब्स, मोर पॉपुलेशन, राइज इन डिमांड लिखा है हमने। इन इन्वेस्टमेंट, इस सब डिमांड। तो बताइए कि जो ये डेवलप्ड एरिया है, यहां पर डिमांड इंक्रीज होगा या डिक्रीज होगा? डेवलप्ड एरियाज में
Increase होगा।
इंक्रीज होगा सर।
इंक्रीज होगा। दैट इज, नाउ यू कम टू अगेन लेफ्ट साइड ऑफ डायग्राम, लेफ्ट पार्ट। देखिए डिमांड अब यहां पर इंक्रीज हो गया, D1 से D2 हो गया, D2। ये तो बोला डिमांड इंक्रीज होगा, तो नाउ इट इज D2। सप्लाई हैड इंक्रीज टू S1, डिमांड हैज बिकम D2, तो नया इक्विलिब्रियम पॉइंट कौन सा होगा?
4.
Sir, 0.4.
4. Very good. That is point number 4, which is still higher wage rate. At this cumulative structure will keep on moving. यानी जो राइट साइड वाला एरियाज है वहां बैकवर्ड इफेक्ट ज्यादा पावरफुल है, दैट विल रिमेन इन लो वेजेस। लेफ्ट साइड वाला जहां स्प्रेड पावरफुल है, दैट विल कीप ऑन मूविंग ऑन ए हायर वेज, मेकिंग अ गैप बिटवीन डुअल रीजनल, यानी जो बात की थी वही पे आ गए। बताइए, नाउ इज इट डायग्राम वेरी वेरी क्लियर और नॉट?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Any doubt? I
No,
think very
sir.
clear. If it is very clear, then I am very happy that we have completed middle with so many illustrations, so many new diagrams, so many good understanding, simple and very interesting. I think everything is very clear to you now. Is it okay?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
That is, we have taken almost 2 hours to complete the Gnan medal. I am happy that we have completed last time also NERCS, this time medal. Again, we'll meet on next Friday to discuss a very, very technical thing. And next Friday, I will discuss choice of techniques. Choice of
सर
techniques.
आपने संडे को कहा था 10 AM।
किस संडे को?
इसी बार सर आपने कहा था कि संडे को 10 AM पे दूंगा और फ्राइडे को 8 AM पे।
नहीं, इस संडे के लिए कमिंग संडे,
पिछले संडे को
Yes,
आपने
sir.
कहा था।
संडे को, पहले
यस सर,
संडे
लास्ट
के लिए,
संडे को कहा।
लास्ट संडे लिया
यस सर,
लास्ट
लिया
संडे
था आपने
हमने
10 से।
लिया था भाई, हम लोगों ने बहुत डिटेल किया था, लगभग 3 घंटे में उन्होंने बात की थी।
यस सर, विशेष सर्कल में नक्स के।
जैसे अगर 3 घंटे, उसमें मैंने आपको कितना बढ़िया बढ़िया नया नया बताया था, 3D, 5T,
5Ts,
7Cs, लीप, कितने बढ़िया बढ़िया एकदम नई चीजें दी थी।
आइडिया।
या आइडिया, क्या बढ़िया आइडिया था, बल्ब जला दिया था हमने, दिमाग का आइडिया ले लिया था हम लोगों ने। इस बार देखिए कितने हम लोग
Yes,
नए नए
sir.
डायग्राम किए हम लोगों ने, इंटरेस्टिंग थे, डिफरेंट फ्रॉम कॉमन बुक्स, थोड़ा सा डिफरेंट हम लोगों ने किया। तो ना मैंने नेक्स्ट फ्राइडे इसलिए कहा है बिकॉज आई एम नॉट इन सिटी दिस संडे, आई एम गोइंग आउट इन सम वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट वर्क, तो वहां पे मेरे पास टाइम नहीं होगा कि मैं वहां से भी आपका क्लास ले पाऊं। आई एम बिजी इन सो मेनी थिंग्स आउट ऑफ इलाहाबाद, इसलिए मैंने नेक्स्ट फ्राइडे कहा है। तो दिस संडे यू एंजॉय योर हॉलीडे,
Okay,
and
sir.
do your preparations
Okay,
for
sir.
26 January. ठीक है? So we have covered a lot of things. Only a few things are remaining. All technical, difficult parts we have covered. Almost covered most of your syllabus. A couple of points are left that I will just discuss next Friday. A very technical thing, that is choice of techniques. Choice of techniques is very important. Little difficult also. I will try to illustrate with some new diagrams, some new ideas to make it simple. ठीक है?
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Thank you,
Thank you,
sir.
sir.
Thank you, sir.
Enjoy.
Nice.
Thank you, sir.
Enjoy.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.